The school heartthrob came up to me and threw down a love letter. "Fiona, I like you." There were jeers from around us, but I secretly sneered. In my past life, I agreed to him only to become a shield for the female lead. Bullied by the male lead's pursuers, humiliated by the male lead's parents, and ultimately failing my college entrance exams. Given another chance, I immediately threw the love letter to the female lead and loudly rejected him. "Sorry, your grades are too poor. I prefer someone who excels in academics, like..." I pointed to the silent academic star next to me, who would become a billionaire in the future. "Like him." Ding! webnovel reminds you to click the subscribe button in the bottom right corner to read the complete novel. "Fiona, what's wrong?" Rita's voice rang in my ear. I realized I had truly returned to 10 years ago. I looked up at the date on the blackboard. It was today that Fred Luther, the school heartthrob, would confess to me. He would soon come to me with a pink love letter and confess his feelings in front of all our classmates. If I agreed to him, I would be bullied by the girls who pursued him for the next 2 years. And I would end up in a deep depression, never recovering. It wasn't until the moment I died in my past life that I realized I was in a novel world. The school heartthrob who confessed to me, Fred Luther, was the male lead. He was proud, cold, and arrogant, looking down on everyone, but there was one person he cherished and protected immensely. That person was Rita. Rita was my desk mate, innocent, cute, and sweet-looking. To protect her, Fred Luther confessed to Rita's best friend, me. I instantly became the target of everyone's hostility and became Rita's shield. I lowered my head, a trace of hatred flashing in my eyes. I was just an ordinary person wanting a normal life. Why was I dragged into this love game as cannon fodder? Fred Luther is coming. It looks like he has a love letter. Is he going to confess? With the jeering voices rising, the corridor and classroom quickly filled with people. Fred walked through the crowd towards me. "Oh no." My deskmate Rita suddenly blushed, lowering her head and muttering. But soon, Rita looked at me with a charming smile. "Fiona, he must be coming for you." Yes, I was a blockhead when it came to feelings. In my past life, I never thought about dating. But when Rita and Fred ate together, they would bring me along, and when they went for walks, they would take me with them. People often teased that Fred and Rita were dating. Whenever that happened, Rita would push me out, shyly pointing at me. "No way. Fred must like Fiona." People would mock. "How is that possible? Fiona isn't as pretty as you, nor does she do as well in school. Fred would have to be blind to like her." I was certainly hurt, but my carefree nature meant I never took those words to heart. But Rita kept whispering in my ear, saying Fred must like me. And Fred would always secretly ask her about me. Over time, the fool me actually started to believe that Fred had feelings for me. So much so that when he gave me a love letter, I didn't even notice that the handwriting wasn't his. I foolishly thought he had really written me a love letter. I coldly watched Rita's shy expression beside me. It was obvious. Although she said Fred was coming for me, she also thought he was going to confess to her. However, in the next second, Fred threw the love letter in front of me. "Fiona, I like you. Go out with me." His feigned affectionate gaze made me nauseous. He was looking at me, but kept sneaking glances at Rita, as if worried his beloved would be hurt. Rita kept her head down, but I could feel her gaze. She must be staring at me, gritting her teeth and cursing me silently. The jeers around us abruptly stopped, and I heard someone whispering. "Oh my God, when did Fiona hook up with Fred? Fiona stole Rita's crush, and they call themselves best friends. How shameless." Yeah, right, some best friend. Looking back at my past self, I was such a naive fool. I was completely unaware of how they manipulated me. While I was being used as a scapegoat, the two of them started dating secretly. It wasn't until after the college entrance exams, when they both got into the same university, that everyone realized I was just a pawn, and they were truly in love. And Rita watched coldly as I was bullied for 2 years, never once defending me. "Fiona, did you hear me?" Seeing that I wasn't responding, Fred Luther was getting impatient. In his eyes, it was probably an honor for me to be Rita's scapegoat. He thought that when he confessed to me, I should have gratefully accepted. and then run around the track 3 times shouting, "I accept." I smiled slightly, stood up, and threw the love letter to Rita, then forcefully lifted her chin. The expression on Rita's face hadn't even changed yet. That vicious and sinister look made everyone freeze for a moment. In the blink of an eye, Rita adjusted her expression, looking at me innocently, making everyone think they had just imagined it. "What's wrong, Fiona?" I looked at Fred, who frowned as if he wanted to say something. I suddenly shouted, "All right, stop joking with me. I'm so tired of being the third wheel every day. And now, at such an important moment, you're still joking with me. I'm really angry. I've told you before, you need to deliver your feelings yourself, you can't always rely on me to pass your love letters. I can't believe a grown man like you is so petty, even needing my help to confess. Do you even care about Rita?" My voice was loud and cheerful, and everyone immediately looked enlightened. So he was asking Fiona to help pass love letters. I knew it, there's no way Fred would be interested in Fiona, it makes sense if it's Rita. Exactly. Rita and Fred are a perfect match. Fred's friends started teasing him too. "Wow, you've kept this well hidden, not even telling us about your secret relationship with Rita." These guys were Fred and Rita's loyal defenders. And in my past life, they also believed I was the one obstructing the main couple, joining the girls in bullying me. Realizing that things were getting out of his control, Fred visibly panicked. Fred's eyes darkened. Just as he was about to say something, I stood up, pulling Rita with me. "Rita, loudly tell everyone what you think, don't be shy." Rita, under everyone's gaze, was flustered and even a bit bashful. She lowered her head. I don't know." "What do you mean you don't know? Don't you always tell me how great Fred's body is? If you could, you'd love to have his children. You might have forgotten, but I haven't. Now the opportunity is right in front of you. If you don't want Fred, plenty of other girls do." These words seemed to remind Rita. Fred's unexpected confession had caught her off guard, and she couldn't help but worry if he really had feelings for me. Even though she was prettier, better, and had a better figure than me. But girls always feel insecure in front of the person they like. Seeing her gradually waver, I suddenly started clapping, "Be together, be together." Our classmates also caught on, clapping and cheering louder and louder, "Be together." In my previous life, I also agreed to Fred in such a situation, overwhelmed by a moment of rashness. Since then, no matter how many times I mentioned breaking up, Fred coldly rejected me. He stood on the moral high ground, and as long as he, the superior, didn't say break up, I could never escape his shadow. This time, Rita stood in my place. She almost instantly shouted out what was on her mind, "I do." Fred couldn't hold it in anymore. Although he was very happy that his crush also liked him, his plan had completely failed. He hesitated for a moment, took Rita's hand, but couldn't help casting a glance at me. In the end, he couldn't help but ask me, "Fiona, don't you like me?" He regretted it as soon as he spoke. Because Rita's face changed instantly, and the surrounding classmates also gave strange looks. What was going on? Fred had just confessed to Rita, and she accepted his confession. Yet he turned around and asked Rita's best friend if she liked him? This was too reckless. Fred's face was a bit awkward, and he immediately wanted to make up for it. But I didn't give him the chance, and immediately answered loudly. "No, I really don't like you. Because your grades are too poor. If you're going to act the whole way." I absolutely didn't want to give them any chance to pick on me. I like those who are good at studying, like. I pointed to the academic genius in the corner wearing black-framed glasses. Like him. The crowd around us stirred again. The academic genius looked up, and his gaze at me was inexplicably complicated. His look made me a bit guilty, so I immediately changed the subject. "All right, I'm not the main character today. Rita, Fred, you two must be careful when dating. Don't let the teachers find out, or it'll be terrible." In my previous life, when my relationship with Fred reached his mother's ears, his mother found me, slapped me, ordered me to break up with her son, and called me a seductress. At the time, I thought Fred hadn't kept it a secret. Looking back now, Fred never intended to keep it a secret. Since he wanted me to be Rita's shield, naturally, the more people who knew, the better. As for how much grievance I suffered in front of his mother, he didn't care at all. What a devoted male lead, going to great lengths to protect his beloved. But it was me, a minor character, who was tormented. Someone shouted, "The teacher is coming," and everyone suddenly dispersed. Fred immediately let go of Rita's hand, his smile a bit stiff as he returned to his seat. Rita also sat down with a sweet expression. After the sweetness, she began to probe me. "Fiona, do you really not like Fred? Do you like Aston Wilson? Is there a problem?" I glanced at her. "I think Aston is much better looking than Fred." Rita looked back at Aston, whose hair was almost covering his eyes, and awkwardly smiled. "Is that so?" I remained expressionless. The glasses do hide some of his looks. But I had seen him in his prime. In my previous life, a month after Fred confessed to me, Aston transferred schools. The next time I saw him was one day after graduation. He appeared on the big screen as a young entrepreneur. He wore gold-rimmed glasses, his hair slightly curled, looking every bit the refined scoundrel. At that time, I was curled up in a dark rental room, watching him climb the billionaire list on the screen. After inquiring, I learned that he started his own clothing company after graduation. While Fred was still deeply entangled with Rita. It was clear that Aston was 100 times better than Fred. But did I really like him and want to pursue him? I didn't dare. After all, the distance between a cannon fodder like me who had just climbed out of the gutter and a favored child of the heavens like him was too great. Rita looked at Aston for a while, then turned back and looked at me with a bit of regret. "Well, I still can't understand your taste, but I respect it. Do you want to pursue Aston? I can help you." I smiled. "No need, I'll pursue him myself. I prefer a love between just two people." I was deliberately mocking her and Fred's situation. Who told them to drag me into their mess? Rita's face showed a moment of embarrassment but quickly returned to normal. After school, Fred was waiting for Rita and me at the school gate. When he saw me, he seemed to want to say something, but Rita stepped forward. Rita hooked her arm around Fred's and shyly waved at me. "Fiona, I won't be walking you home today. You can go back by yourself." Fred mumbled something but didn't say anything in the end. I waved my hand with a forced smile, "Wish you both happiness." After they walked away, I rolled my eyes, but then I heard a voice. "Want to go home together?" I was stunned. When I turned my head, it was Aston Wilson. I remembered using him as an excuse today and felt a bit guilty. Just as I was about to refuse, Aston asked again, "How long do you plan to avoid me?" Actually, Aston and I were not just ordinary classmates. In fact, we were once the closest of friends. Aston and I used to be neighbors, living in the same villa community. Our parents were business partners. When we were kids, we often went to and from school together and played house. He would be the dad, and I would be the mom, playing with teddy bears all day long. He was quiet, so I would drag him around. He wasn't popular with other kids, so I helped him make friends. Later, my family's business failed, my father passed away, and my mother remarried. I moved out of the villa community and lived alone, gradually losing contact with him. Until last year in high school, when we were placed in the same class, we met again. And I pretended not to know him. I thought he had forgotten about me too. But he clearly hadn't. I gave an awkward smile. "How am I avoiding you? It's just that I see you are usually busy with your studies, so I don't dare to disturb you." Aston's expression remained unchanged. "I only study at school. After school, I have plenty of time, you can disturb me anytime. Besides, didn't you say you like someone good at studying? I can help you with your studies." I was stunned, my face flushing red. I didn't expect Aston to take my offhand remark seriously. How could I explain to him that I said those things just to divert attention from Fred and Rita? I stammered, unable to give an answer. Aston stared at me. Suddenly, a trace of disappointment flashed in his eyes, and he smiled self-deprecatingly. "I understand. You think I'm ugly." I widened my eyes and waved my hands repeatedly. "No. I've seen him looking exactly like my type. How could I think he's ugly? It's just. Ever since my family went bankrupt and moved out of the villa area, I felt there was an invisible line drawn between us. It seemed like we suddenly became very distant. He had come looking for me a few times, but I was always too scared to see him, not knowing what to say. But I knew all of this was my problem. It was me who changed. Aston never changed. He was still as gentle and courteous, kind and polite to everyone. Such a good person shouldn't fall into self-doubt because of my selfishness. I immediately said, "I don't think you're ugly. Let's go home together." Only then did Aston show a faint smile. "Okay." He deliberately slowed his pace to walk alongside me. Not knowing what to say, he spoke first. "If you want, I can help you with your studies. Didn't you say you wanted to get into a university? Your current grades are far from enough." I nodded instinctively, suddenly realizing that I hadn't told anyone about wanting to get into a university. I saw it on the wish wall. I was taken aback. Among nearly 3,000 students in the school, everyone wrote their wishes on the wall, and he actually saw mine? Such a coincidence? I wondered. Not a coincidence. Aston shook his head. When you were writing, I was standing not far away. I've always been watching you write. Suddenly, I felt an indescribable sensation in my heart. So even though I had been avoiding him for so many years, he still kept me in his thoughts as a friend. You don't blame me?" Aston smiled. "Actually, I understand you. You've always been a strong-willed person, and the changes in your family must have had a great impact on you. So you want to change your fate through your own efforts." Listening to Aston, he was indeed speaking my mind. I didn't expect him to be the one who understood me the most. "So I also hope you can get into a university. If you need help, I can tutor you." I hadn't come back to my senses yet, and instinctively nodded. Aston continued, "Actually, I was also surprised that you didn't accept Fred's confession today." I immediately said seriously, "Of course I wouldn't accept. Fred Luther may look okay, but he's rotten inside." Aston was slightly taken aback, then smiled. "So you knew, that's good. I was always worried about how to tell you." I was puzzled and quickly asked tentatively, "Wait, what do you mean?" Aston explained, "My parents and Fred's parents are business partners, they often have dinners together. At a dinner last month, my parents asked me to go with them and pick up Fred on the way. When I went to pick up Fred, he was just coming out of a nightclub, with girls on both arms. He's not a good person, at least not good enough for you." When Aston said this, he looked me straight in the eyes. I knew he was proving that he wasn't lying. Because we made a pinky promise when we were kids, neither of us is allowed to lie to the other. If we encounter a problem, we must look into each other's eyes and speak the truth sincerely. I haven't forgotten this childhood promise. Aston hasn't forgotten either. I always thought you liked Fred Luther. It wasn't until today that I realized Fred and Rita are a couple. I felt like crying and laughing at the same time. Why didn't you tell me this earlier? What if I had accepted Fred's confession today? Would you never have told me any of this? Just like in our past life, he would suddenly transfer and leave. Aston was silent for a moment. "I'm sorry, Fiona. If you had accepted his confession, I indeed wouldn't have told you this. I didn't want to make you sad. I would only try to use the cooperation between our families to threaten him to treat you well. That's the only thing I had the courage to do." I was stunned. Because I remembered that in my past life, after I accepted Fred's confession, Aston and Fred had a period of friendship. A top student and a school heartthrob walking together attracted a lot of attention. But everyone found it strange. Why would Fred want to hang out with someone as rigid as Aston? And during that time, I indeed wasn't bullied at all. Fred's attitude towards me was especially good. I even really thought Fred liked me. The turning point in everyone's attitude was when Aston transferred and left. I suddenly understood. It turned out Aston had been mediating for me all that time, trying to change Fred, trying to protect me. And Fred acted so well that Aston thought he had truly changed and started sincerely treating me well. So Aston felt at ease to leave. My voice choked. What if he doesn't change? Or, what if he just pretends to treat me well? Would you believe him and then leave me without hesitation? Aston was stunned. Obviously, one of the reasons we could play together was that we both weren't very sharp. We were too easily trusting of others and didn't understand all the twists and turns. I easily believed Rita's words and accepted Fred's confession. And he easily believed that Fred had changed because of him, so he left with peace of mind. From then on, our lives completely diverged. I suddenly sat by the roadside, buried my face in my arms, and broke down crying. I couldn't believe I had missed so much without realizing it. Aston stood beside me, at a loss, his voice tinged with anxiety. Fiona. It's my fault. I didn't think of this possibility. I won't leave you. I swear. Aston raised his hand to the sky, and I hurriedly stopped him. With reddened eyes, I shook my head and, like when we were kids, pretended to be fierce. No swearing. Can't you just let me cry quietly for a bit? Seeing that I wasn't really angry, Aston visibly breathed a sigh of relief and slowly put his hand down. Go ahead and cry. I lowered my head again and started wailing. I didn't know if I was crying for myself or for the past Aston. I avoided him, stayed away from him, yet he still endured grievances and setbacks for me, even considering my future before he left. At that time, I was overwhelmed by inferiority and cowardice, completely unable to face him. I was such a terrible friend. I cried for a full half hour before slowly raising my head. Aston handed me a tissue and softly asked, "Shall we go home?" I took the tissue and wiped my face haphazardly. Yes, let's go home. Aston immediately reached out his hand. Your backpack. When we were kids, we often walked home together, and I would always bully him into carrying my backpack. I obediently took off my backpack and handed it to him. After walking a few steps, I suddenly stopped and looked at Aston with a slightly brightened gaze. Do the words you just said still count? Can you tutor me? Aston's eyes filled with a smile. Always. The next day, Aston and I went to school together. As soon as we entered the classroom, we saw a group of girls led by Rita making a commotion. Oh my God, Fiona, you got Aston so quickly? It seems you really like him, Rita said with a smile. Oh, we live close to each other, so we go to school together. I sat down expressionlessly, not even bothering to respond to Rita. Rita thought I was shy and laughed teasingly, then turned to everyone and asked, by the way, is anyone planning to perform at the coming-of-age ceremony this weekend? Rita was the teacher's designated performer for the dance. She said this to attract everyone's attention and then bring up her dance performance. Everyone started discussing it, unaware of her intention. But my thoughts drifted away, recalling something unforgettable and deeply impactful from my past life. In the previous life's coming-of-age party, Rita had pulled me into signing up for a performance together. I sang, and she danced. But on the day, Rita got sick and didn't go on stage. Fred's admirers bribed the makeup artist to mess up my makeup in the mirrorless backstage, making me look hideous. When I wanted to check a mirror, they pushed me onto the stage, saying there wasn't enough time. The moment I stepped on stage, the camera zoomed in on me, projecting my ugly face on the big screen. The entire hall burst into laughter. That day, I lost all my dignity. Fred's mom found me backstage and gave me a scathing lecture, saying I disgraced the Luther family while posing as Fred's girlfriend. Fiona, why don't we perform together? Rita turned to me, saying the same thing as in my past life. Seeing me silent, Rita tugged at my arm, acting cute. Fiona, you sing so well. This is a great opportunity to show off. She took the registration form from the class monitor, ready to write my name. No, I don't want to participate, I refused immediately. I did sing well, and in my past life, I did hope to gain everyone's favor through singing. But that day, I didn't even finish a single lyric before rushing off the stage, crying and ruining my makeup backstage. Given another chance, I wouldn't want to sing for these people. Rita tried to persuade me again, but I firmly said, I don't want to participate. Don't write my name. My classmates were stunned to see me so adamantly refuse Rita. Rita's face fell, showing a hurt expression. But she quickly forced a smile. It's okay, I'll perform alone then. The surrounding classmates quickly comforted her. I watched coldly, saying nothing. Her pitiful act was something I had seen countless times and had grown tired of. Aston seemed to notice my mood was off. After class, he stopped me in the hallway and asked what was wrong. I suddenly thought of something. Aston, do you have a dance partner for the coming-of-age ceremony this weekend? In my past life, Aston didn't attend the coming-of-age ceremony. Thinking back, it was probably because he was so solitary and quiet that no one invited him. Aston stared at me in a daze. The next second, I reached out my hand to him. Can I invite you to the dance? Aston immediately tensed up, his hand at his side clenching tightly. I sighed. If you don't want to, just forget it. Of course, I want to, Aston quickly said. He lowered his head somewhat sheepishly. It just so happens that I can give you a dress. I raised an eyebrow. What kind of dress? It's a dress I designed myself. You can design dresses? I was a bit surprised. Aston smiled. I designed it a long time ago. I always thought it would suit you. I reached out my hand. Let me see the design. Aston shook his head. I'll deliver the dress to your doorstep the day before the weekend party. So mysterious. I muttered softly, but couldn't help feeling a sense of anticipation in my heart. We returned to the classroom, and Rita had a teasing look on her face again. I couldn't be bothered to respond to her. At this moment, Fred walked over, looking at Rita with gentle eyes. Rita, would you like to go to the party with me? Rita's face instantly turned red. She nodded shyly. I would. Fred smiled and was about to leave, but paused when his gaze fell on me. Fiona, do you have a dance partner? As soon as he said this, the surroundings suddenly became quiet. Fred looked at Rita, explaining with a slightly nervous tone. I was worried no one would invite Fiona. I didn't want to leave you waiting for me alone. Rita's tense expression gradually relaxed. Oh, I see. I smiled faintly. Don't worry, I have a dance partner. I pointed to Aston in the corner. I've already invited Aston. Fred glanced at Aston, his expression a bit complicated, as if he wanted to say something but ultimately turned back to his seat. In the blink of an eye, it was the night before the party. There was a knock on the door. When I opened the door, there was only a gift box outside. I carried the box to the balcony and saw Aston waving at me from downstairs. I'm heading back now. Aston was always considerate. He knew it was dark and I was home alone, so he didn't come in. He just waved from a distance. I waved back with a smile. Go on, then. I opened the gift box and saw a dark green spaghetti strap evening dress, and my eyes widened in surprise. In my previous life, I had seen this dress. I had seen this elegant, vintage dark green evening dress on the covers of several fashion magazines. Partly because it was indeed stunning, and partly because of its story. It was said that the dress was designed by a designer to give to his best friend. He hoped that one day, his friend would see this dress. My heartbeat grew louder, almost deafening, pounding in my ears. The person who designed this dress was Aston, and he wanted to give it to me. And his best friend was me. When I was curled up in a dark rental room, wallowing in self-pity, I didn't know that someone in the world had always been thinking of me. Tears fell uncontrollably. I quickly wiped them away, afraid they might drip onto the dress. My phone buzzed with a message. It was from Aston. Do you like it? I replied immediately, I love it, very much. Thank you, my best friend. The dialog box on the other side repeatedly showed typing. Finally, he sent a smiley face. That's what I wanted to say. I hugged my phone, crying and laughing like a fool. Thankfully, this time, I didn't miss it. Knock, knock. There was another knock on the door. I thought Aston had returned and rushed to open it. But outside stood a man in a suit, holding a gift box. The man adjusted his sunglasses. I was sent by Mr. Luther to deliver this outfit. Fred Luther? 3 question marks popped up in my head. You must be mistaken. My name is Fiona. You should be delivering this to Rita. The man remained expressionless. No, it's for Fiona. Miss Rita has someone else delivering her outfit. I fell silent. What is Fred planning now? I was about to close the door, but the man stopped me. Mr. Luther said that you come from a poor family and can't afford an evening dress. This dress is worth $3,000, Miss Fiona. It's probably the most expensive dress you'll ever wear in your life. I squinted. Did Fred tell you to say that too? The man shook his head. Even if Mr. Luther didn't say it, I understand, and this is his favorite color, blue. He was almost hinting that if I wore this dress, I might have a chance to win his master's favor. I sneered. If your master likes it so much, why don't you take it back and let him wear it himself? Or... I looked him up and down. You wear it, go to his room at midnight, you might have a chance too. Without waiting for him to speak, I closed the door and shouted through it. If you don't leave, I'll call the police. 3, 2. I heard hurried footsteps leaving outside the door. When I opened the door again, the gift box was left outside. I rolled my eyes and immediately called a local courier service to pick it up. The delivery guy asked me where to send it. I was going to say Fred's house, but then I had a sudden idea. I changed the address to Rita's house. I smiled as I handed over the gift box, cash on delivery. The next evening, Aston sent a text, I'm waiting for you downstairs. I quickly threw on a blazer and rushed downstairs. Aston was leaning against his bicycle, standing under a sycamore tree. The evening light cast a glow on the road, and his appearance overlapped with the image on the big screen from my past life. He had taken off his thick glasses, and his hair was styled in soft waves. He didn't need any fancy clothes to look good. He was just wearing clean, casual clothes, but his every move exuded an air of nobility. The moment our eyes met, I was a bit stunned, and so was he. Do I look good? I walked up to him. Aston nodded, staring into my eyes, and said gently, You are the most beautiful girl I've ever seen. I blushed a bit. It's the dress that makes me look good. This dress is really beautiful. If you could start a clothing company in the future, this dress would definitely attract many people. Aston shook his head. I don't want to sell this dress to anyone. I always intended to give it to you. Only you can bring out its beauty. My heart warmed. Got it. I sat on the back seat of the bicycle, and he took me to the venue reserved for the school party. But the closer we got to the auditorium, the more I remembered what happened backstage in my previous life. And my mind became a bit unsettled. That incident had a huge impact on me. Now that Rita is in the position I was in, will she go through the same thing? I was indeed hurt a lot in my past life, but most of it was caused by Fred. Rita was at most a bystander. If I choose to stand by today, won't I be no different from Rita back then? When I first returned to this life, I indeed wished Fred and Rita would die, wished I could kill them with my own hands. But after those few days, I became more and more calm. Maybe it's because I realized that there are people in this world worth cherishing. I shouldn't punish others with my future, and I don't want Aston to get dragged into this revenge because of me. What I've always wanted is just a normal life. I asked softly, Aston, if you were bullied before, and the person you dislike encounters the same situation, would you warn her? Aston turned to look at me. I won't. I remained silent. Aston continued, but I hope you do. I was stunned. Why? Most people would choose not to remind that person, and I would too. Because even if I don't remind that person, I wouldn't feel guilty. But you're different. Fiona, you would feel guilty, you'd have psychological pressure, you'd be uneasy. Because you're a very kind person. I clenched my fists. Kind and stupid, right? No. Aston's voice was unusually firm. You're not stupid, you're just being yourself. As long as your kindness doesn't hurt others, no one has the right to judge you. I hope you can always put yourself first. If not reminding someone makes you feel guilty, then there's no need to force yourself to be the bad guy. My eyes felt a bit warm. What if I make a mistake? Aston said, You won't make a mistake. Even if you do, I'll be your support, I'll bear it with you. We're best friends, aren't we? Yes. I made a quiet decision. We stood in front of the auditorium, linked arms, and stepped into the brightly lit hall, instantly drawing everyone's attention. Who is that? Is that Fiona? Is the dress she's wearing haute couture? It looks so expensive. It must be. But who's the guy next to her? People gathered around to talk to us until Aston spoke up. And everyone realized he was the old-fashioned, studious Aston from our class. The way people looked at me immediately became complicated. Someone even quietly pulled me aside, asking if I had always known Aston was so handsome. I smiled, yes. Actually, Aston was quite cute as a child, fair and tender, very well-behaved and adorable. Otherwise, I wouldn't have put up with his slow nature and insisted on dragging him to play with me. I gave Aston a look, signaling him to help deal with our classmates. I'm going backstage to check things out. I had decided to remind Rita. Just like Aston said, since I couldn't control my guilt, I shouldn't force myself to be this passive villain. As soon as I lifted the curtain backstage, I heard Rita's voice. Long time no see, great makeup artist. I paused. I saw Rita chatting and laughing with the makeup artist who had given me an ugly makeover in my past life. Rita covered her mouth and giggled. I heard you're doing makeup for celebrities now? I'm afraid I won't be able to get you. The makeup artist replied familiarly. What are you talking about? We've known each other for so many years. If you call me, how could I not come? My mind went blank with a buzz. Hey, Fiona, when did you get here? Rita pulled the makeup artist over to me, first complimenting my dress, and then introducing the makeup artist. Fiona, this is my childhood friend. I forced myself to calm down, clenched my fists, my nails digging into my flesh. Did you specially invite her today? Rita proudly flipped her hair. Of course, otherwise with her fame, who could get her? Fiona, you're really missing out by not performing today. All right, stop flattering me, the makeup artist laughed. You should get your makeup done, you're going on stage soon. I watched the two of them busy, my breathing gradually quickened. And the hatred that I had barely suppressed began to grow wildly again. No wonder such a famous makeup artist would come to our school for a small party. No wonder she targeted me, a complete stranger, in my past life. In my past life, I embarrassed myself on stage. And after I stepped down, Rita found me, indignant, saying it must have been those girls who secretly had a crush on Fred. At the time, I believed her. So it was Rita. Fiona, is Rita inside? Fred's voice came from behind me, snapping me back to reality. When he saw me, a flash of amazement crossed his eyes, but he quickly frowned. Why aren't you wearing that dress? Fred? You're here. Hearing the voice, Rita immediately popped out of the dressing room and hugged Fred's arm. Fred's eyes showed a moment of panic when he saw the blue dress on Rita, that dress. Rita looked sweet. You're so funny, sending me one dress was enough, but you sent two. Although this one doesn't quite fit my size, I think you'd like this one better, so I'm wearing it. How is it? Does it look good? Rita spun around in front of Fred, whose smile was rather stiff. It looks good. Rita kissed Fred on the cheek. I'm going to perform now, cheer for me. Rita walked towards the stage. I stood behind Fred and suddenly spoke. Did you tell Rita? Fred was startled, quickly looking at Rita's back and only relaxing when he saw she was far away. Tell her what? Tell her you secretly sent me a dress. I smiled at him. I meant to return it to you, but accidentally sent it to Rita. Fred awkwardly tugged at the corner of his mouth. You two are good friends, I casually sent a dress, what's the big deal? I nodded in agreement. You're right, since it's no big deal, I'll just tell Rita later. Fred panicked. You wouldn't dare. Fred glared at me through gritted teeth. I sneered. Why wouldn't I dare? Fred was about to retort when his phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen and quickly answered, a sharp voice coming from the other end. After hanging up, Fred looked around and, not finding a suitable person, finally turned to me with an extremely unpleasant expression. Fiona, I need a favor. When my mom comes, block her for me, don't let her interrupt Rita's performance. I raised an eyebrow. Why should I help you? Fred gritted his teeth. After it's done, I'll pay you. Including hush money for the dress, I'll give you 50,000. I immediately pulled up the payment code. No need to wait until it's done. Pay now. After all, who else but me, the eternal fool, would help them keep their secret? Even if there were others, Fred wouldn't trust them. After all, he didn't know I had been reborn and thought my threat was just to get his attention. I want 100,000, and don't forget to note it as a voluntary gift. Fred looked at me in disbelief, his phone ringing again. He had little time and could only hurriedly scan the payment code. Before he clicked pay, I stood on tiptoe and added an extra 0 on his phone. Fred's eyes widened. Face recognition successful. I kindly reminded him, no need to widen your eyes so much, it can recognize you. Soon, the notification sound for the payment rang, 1 million received. I smiled brightly, young Master Fred truly has the means. But let me make it clear, I can't guarantee I'll stop your mom. Fred looked like he was about to vomit blood. When did you make that clear? The money was already paid, and now she says she might not be able to stop his mom? I shrugged. If you don't need me, can I leave? Yes. The payment was made, and his mother was about to arrive. How could he dare to say no? I nodded. Okay, whether it works or not, you still have to pay me the remaining balance. Fred said, there's a remaining balance. The sound of hurried high heels approached, and Fred had no time to argue and fled in a panic. Soon, Mrs. Luther, draped in fur, wearing high heels, and adorned with jewelry, walked in. Which one is Rita? Let me see which vixen is seducing my son. The surrounding classmates immediately looked over, but no one dared to speak. Mrs. Luther took out her phone and started comparing photos of Rita one by one. Finally confirming that she wasn't backstage, she must be on stage. Seeing her about to rush onto the stage, I quickly stopped her. Mrs. Luther, she's still performing. What are you doing? Get out of my way. Mrs. Luther raised her hand to hit me. My reflexes were quick, and before her slap could land, mine did. Slap! A crisp sound echoed backstage, and Mrs. Luther covered her now red cheek in disbelief. You dare to hit me? I glanced at Fred, who was hiding in the dressing room, observing through the crack in the door. He was also stunned. He had told me to stop her, not to hit her. I smiled at him. It's okay, this is my gift to him. Mrs. Luther, I understand how you feel, but can we sit down and talk? Mrs. Luther's voice trembled. You dare to hit me, what is there to talk about? I want to see my lawyer. I lowered my voice. Mrs. Luther, aren't you here to settle accounts with Rita? I'm Rita's best friend. Whatever you want to know, I can tell you. As soon as I realized the makeup artist was hired by Rita, memories from my past life became clearer. I suddenly understood why Mrs. Luther found my house and knew so much private information about me. It was all thanks to Rita. Now, I would return this favor to Rita exactly as it was. If you rush up there now, first, it will damage your reputation. And second, if your son finds out, it will strain your relationship. You clearly have better ways to break them up, so why do it yourself? Mrs. Luther looked me up and down. I continued in a low voice, to be honest, that slap just now was instructed by your son. Mrs. Luther was shocked. I sighed, he went to such lengths to protect Rita. Do you still think you can break them up by causing a scene? Mrs. Luther slowly calmed down. What useful information can you give me? I smiled slightly and took out a payment code again. 100,000 per piece, no credit. I glanced at the slap mark on Mrs. Luther's face and apologized. I'll give you a 10% discount. Mrs. Luther left, and Fred came out of the dressing room, breathing a long sigh of relief. I counted the zeros on the screen and contentedly put down my phone. How did you do it? Fred asked me. I lifted my chin, trade secret. Rita came down from the stage to a round of applause and cheers, and Fred went up to meet her. The two hugged each other. After the sweetness, Rita noticed that everyone was looking at her with a bit of pity. Rita panicked a little. What's wrong? But with Fred there, no one dared to tell the truth. I also waved my hand with a smile. I have something to do, so I'll leave first. Without waiting for their response, I turned and left the backstage, rescuing Aston from the crowd of classmates. Aston let out a long breath once I pulled him to a quiet place. You're finally back. He didn't ask where I went or what I did, he just looked at me with bright eyes. The auditorium music started playing. At the same time, a commotion came from the crowd. Rita ran into Mrs. Luther after leaving the backstage and started arguing with her. Everyone quickly gathered to watch, ignoring the opening of the first dance. I looked at Aston, bent slightly, and extended my hand. Aston Wilson, would you like to dance the first dance with me? After finishing the first dance with Aston, we held hands and left the bustling hall. 3 days later, Rita transferred to another school. It was said that her family's company was targeted and attacked by the Luther family and was on the verge of bankruptcy. Rita's parents eventually traced the problem back to her early relationship, so they immediately arranged for her transfer. When Rita left, she clung to Fred and refused to let go, tears streaming down her face. What a dramatic scene of forced separation. After being forced to part with his lover, Fred blocked my way after class. He gritted his teeth, his eyes red as he stared at me. Fiona, don't think I don't know what you've been doing behind our backs. I smiled. I never intended to hide anything from you. I did everything I promised. I didn't tell Rita that you secretly gave me a dress. And I helped you stop your mom from ruining Rita's performance. Fred shouted, but you also took money from my mom. I blinked, genuinely surprised. I never said I only took your money. Fred was stunned for a while, then pointed at my nose. You wait. Feeling quite good, I turned back to the classroom only to see Aston standing at the door. Are you okay? He asked, glancing warily at Fred's retreating figure. I'm fine, I reassured him. I was fine, but the next day, something happened to Aston. I received a call from his parents, saying that he was in the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, I found out that Aston had fought with Fred right at the gate of my neighborhood. Aston only had some minor injuries on his face, but Fred ended up in the emergency room. No matter how much his parents asked, Aston refused to explain the reason. It wasn't until I arrived that Aston showed a hint of vulnerability and grievance. Aston looked at me. I'm sorry, I wanted to let you handle it yourself, but I couldn't hold back. I shook my head. How could I blame him? Seeing Aston finally willing to talk, his parents breathed a sigh of relief. I looked at his parents and apologized. It's my fault for causing trouble for you. His mother smiled gently. Silly child, we know you two are very close, and protecting a friend is the right thing to do. Aston did the right thing today. You don't need to worry about the Luther family, we will handle it. She patted my head, and I felt like I was back in my childhood, being treated with the same gentleness. My eyes grew a bit warm. All these years, I hadn't visited them, yet they hadn't treated me any differently and were as kind as ever. On the drive home, I composed myself and said seriously, Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, this whole thing is because of me. I will take responsibility. I had been waiting for an opportunity, but I didn't expect it to come so suddenly. They exchanged a glance, then looked at me and explained softly. Fiona, even if it weren't because of you, we were planning to sever ties with the Luther family. I was stunned. Mrs. Wilson continued, I wasn't sure whether to tell you before. When your family went bankrupt, and we suffered heavy losses too, it was all due to the Luther family's machinations. All these years, we have been trying to find evidence against them, but we never had the chance. Until this year, when we cooperated with the Luther family, we discovered some clues. So don't blame yourself. We were bound to clash with the Luther family sooner or later. As I listened, my expression grew serious. So, the Luther family was also behind my family's bankruptcy and downfall. I lowered my head and searched for a document on my phone, then sent it to Aston. Mrs. Wilson, I have some leads here. I don't know if they can help you. In my past life, during the final stage of my life in a 10 square meter rented room, the only joy that kept me going was holding my phone and watching various scandals about the Luther family enterprises unfold. Tax evasion, shoddy construction, bribing officials. I noted every scandal in my notebook, and whenever I felt I couldn't go on, I would take it out and tell myself, hang in there a bit longer, at least until you see them completely fall, and then you can fall too. However, because the Luther family developed rapidly over the past few years, no one could stand up to bring them down. In the end, Fred and Rita, the male and female protagonists, shone again and teamed up to save the Luther family enterprises. I looked down at the document. Now, a few years earlier, the Luther family had not fully grown. Everything was still possible. Mrs. Wilson took the documents from Aston, her eyes brightening as she read. "Fiona, this is incredibly useful." I held my breath. Can it completely bankrupt the Luther family? She nodded heavily. "I promise you, it definitely can." My clenched fist suddenly relaxed. That's good. The harm they once caused me and my family could finally be repaid. The next day, Fred didn't go to school. It was said that he had been in the hospital. Half a month later, Fred's seat was completely gone. It was said that many things had happened to his family, and classmates were all trying to find out what had happened. Only Aston and I knew that his family had just gone bankrupt and were extremely busy dealing with the fallout. I saw Fred again one day after the college entrance exams. He was crouching in front of my apartment complex, no longer looking like the school heartthrob he once was. Aston frowned upon seeing him, and I gestured for him to stay calm. Fred approached, ignoring Aston, and asked me for the transfer from that day. I found the transfer record and pointed to the words voluntary gift with a slight smile. "Sorry, no refunds." Fred's eyes were red. "You want to destroy me because you can't have me, is that it?" Aston and I exchanged puzzled looks. What was he talking about? I felt awkwardly amused. Before I could say anything, Fred wore a look of complete despair. "Now that I'm like this, are you happy? Seeing me beg in front of you, does it make you proud?" I gradually restrained my smile. "Fred Luther, I never take pleasure in trampling on others' dignity. All I ever wanted was a normal life. But some people didn't see me as human. They saw me as a tool, a shield. They toyed with my feelings, trampled on my self-respect, and watched me cry and beg for help without lifting a finger." Fred looked at me in shock. He clearly hadn't expected that I had seen through his intentions from the start. I stared at him, expressionless. "But I'm different from those people. When I see you living miserably now, I don't feel the same pride and disdain that you felt when you saw me. I only feel one thing." Fred's lips moved. "What feeling?" I smiled. "A sense of relief." Because Fred and Rita were no longer the male and female protagonists towering over the world, no longer seeing us ordinary people as ants. They had become ordinary people, no longer living above others. Besides me, no one else would be drawn into their love drama. Their story was over. I took Aston's hand and walked past Fred without looking back. Aston looked at me, squeezed my hand, and said gently, "Mom made your favorite cake." I nodded and smiled at him. And my life was just beginning.